Imagine an island. Not just any island, but the most isolated inhabited place on Earth. A speck of land lost in the immensity of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest continental shore. Imagine this island, Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. Picture it, a landscape dotted with colossal stone figures, silent sentinels, gazing out towards the horizon, their weathered faces etched with the secrets of centuries. These aren't mere statues. They are Moai, the iconic guardians of a forgotten civilization. They stand as monumental testaments to the ingenuity, the artistry, and the sheer determination of a people who dared to build a thriving society in the most unforgiving of environments. Easter Island. The name itself whispers of mystery. It was christened by Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen on Easter Sunday in 1722, a day that marked the beginning of its exposure to the outside world, a world that would irrevocably alter its destiny. But before the arrival of European ships, before the arrival of the diseases and the devastation that would follow, Rapa Nui was a vibrant, flourishing society. But how? How did a civilization emerge on this remote, volcanic outpost, so far removed from the cradles of human development? How did they manage to carve and transport those massive stone figures, some weighing over 80 tons, across the rugged terrain? And perhaps the most poignant question of all, what ultimately happened to the people of Rapa Nui? What led to the downfall of this once proud society? These are the questions that have captivated historians, archaeologists, and countless others for generations. The story of Rapa Nui is a story of incredible achievement, of environmental challenges, of societal collapse, and of resilience. It's a story that holds important lessons for us today about the fragility of civilization and the delicate balance between humanity and the environment. This is a story about a people who, against all odds, built a complex and sophisticated society. They developed intricate social structures, a deep connection to their ancestors, and a unique artistic expression that continues to awe and inspire. They were master navigators, skilled builders, and ingenious engineers. They were, in many ways, a microcosm of the human experience, demonstrating both our capacity for greatness and our potential for self-destruction. The very landscape of Easter Island is a testament to the mysteries it holds. The island itself is volcanic in origin, a product of the fiery forces deep beneath the ocean floor. Its terrain is a mixture of rolling hills, volcanic craters, and a rugged coastline, constantly battered by the relentless waves of the Pacific. This isolation, this geographical remoteness, was both a blessing and a curse. It allowed the Rapa Nui people to develop in relative isolation, free from external interference for centuries. But it also meant that they were entirely dependent on the island's finite resources. The Moai, those iconic stone figures, are the most visible symbol of the Rapa Nui civilization. They stand as silent witnesses to the rise and fall of a society. They are not just statues. They are embodiments of ancestral power, spiritual guardians watching over the island and its people. Their creation was a monumental undertaking, requiring immense effort, organizational skills, and a deep understanding of engineering principles. The process of carving a moai from the volcanic rock, transporting it across the island, and then erecting it on a ceremonial platform was an extraordinary feat, particularly considering the lack of modern technology. It involved the collective efforts of the entire community, from the skilled artisans who carved the statues to the laborers who moved them using logs, ropes, and their own ingenuity. The construction of the moai was not merely a display of artistic prowess. It was deeply intertwined with the religious and social fabric of Rapa Nui society. The statues were erected on platforms called ahu, which served as ceremonial centers, places where rituals and ceremonies were performed to honor the ancestors and to reinforce the social order. The moai, therefore, were not just objects of art. They were symbols of power, prestige, and the very essence of Rapa Nui identity. But the story of Rapa Nui is not just a story of triumph, it is also a tragedy. It's a story of a civilization that, despite its remarkable achievements, ultimately faced a devastating decline. The very factors that contributed to its initial success, its isolation, Its abundant resources, its cultural ingenuity, also contributed to its eventual downfall. The island's resources, though initially plentiful, were finite. As the population grew, the demands on the land increased. The forests, which provided the logs needed to move the Moai and build canoes, were gradually depleted. The soil, once fertile, began to erode. The delicate balance of the ecosystem was disrupted. The consequences were dire. Competition for dwindling resources intensified. The once unified society fractured into warring clans, each vying for control. The Moai, once symbols of unity and ancestral power, were toppled, their faces deliberately defaced, a sign of the collapse of old beliefs and the triumph of rival factions. And then came the Europeans. The arrival of explorers and traders in the 18th century brought with it devastating diseases to which the Rapa Nui people had no immunity. This, combined with the slave raids of the 19th century, decimated the population. From an estimated peak of 15,000 people, the population plummeted to a mere handful. The vibrant culture that had carved the Moai and built a complex society was on the brink of extinction. But the story of Rapa Nui doesn't end there. Today, the descendants of the original Rapa Nui people are striving to preserve their unique heritage. They are working to restore the Moai, to protect the environment, and to pass on their language and traditions to future generations. Their efforts are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of cultural identity. So, join us as we delve deeper into the captivating story of Rapa Nui. We will explore its origins, its triumphs, and its tragic decline. We will examine the mysteries of the Moai, the complexities of Rapa Nui society, and the environmental and societal factors that contributed to its downfall. We will learn about the legacy of this extraordinary people and the lessons we can take from their story. The story of Rapa Nui is a poignant reminder of the fragility of civilization and the importance of sustainability. It is a cautionary tale about the delicate relationship between humanity and the environment, a story that continues to resonate with us today. Prepare to unravel the tragic story of Rapa Nui. Imagine this, a tiny speck of land, adrift in the vast, blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Not just any speck, mind you. We're talking about the most isolated inhabited place on Earth. Thousands of miles from any major landmass, a remote outpost of humanity. This is Rapa Nui, or as it's more commonly known, Easter Island. This extreme isolation, this geographical remoteness, wasn't just a geographical fact, it was the very architect of its destiny. It shaped everything for the people who had come to call this island home. They were entirely dependent on the island's finite resources. Everything they had, everything they needed, had to come from this one small island. And, crucially, it demanded an incredible level of ingenuity. Their survival, their prosperity, their very existence rested on their ability to innovate, to adapt, and to make the most of what they had. Think about the sheer audacity of it. To navigate across thousands of miles of open ocean, with no land in sight, guided only by the stars, the currents, and an incredible understanding of the natural world. This wasn't a casual weekend trip. This was a monumental undertaking, a testament to the courage and skill of ancient Polynesian navigators. Around 1200 AD, these brave seafarers, likely hailing from the Marquesas or Gambier Islands, embarked on this perilous journey. They were not just explorers, they were pioneers. They were the founders of a new society. They brought with them the seeds of their culture, the essential plants and animals that would form the foundation of their new life on Rapa Nui. Imagine the anticipation, the hope, as they finally sighted this virgin land, this untouched paradise. They brought with them everything they needed to survive and thrive: taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, chickens, pigs. These were not just food sources. They were the building blocks of a new civilization. They carried with them their knowledge of agriculture, their understanding of ocean currents, their social structures, and their spiritual beliefs. They brought the very essence of Polynesian culture, transplanting it onto this remote volcanic island. The island itself, though isolated, offered a fertile ground for this new society to take root. The volcanic soil was rich, and for a time, the island was blessed with abundant palm forests. These forests were not just a source of wood, they were the lifeblood of the community. The wood was used for building homes, for constructing canoes, essential for fishing and for navigating the waters around the island, and, as we will see, for a much more ambitious purpose. For centuries, the Rapa Nui people flourished. Their population grew, sustained by the bounty of the land and the sea. This period was characterized by a remarkable flourishing of culture and society. They developed a complex social structure with clear hierarchies and specialized roles. They were not a primitive, scattered group. They were a sophisticated society with intricate social organization and a deep spiritual connection to their ancestors. This connection to their ancestors is perhaps most visibly represented by the iconic Moai. These colossal stone figures, carved from the island's volcanic rock, are the enduring legacy of the Rapa Nui people. They are not just sculptures. They were believed to embody the spirits of deified ancestors, watching over the villages and protecting the island. They were tangible representations of the spiritual realm, a constant reminder of the presence of those who came before. The sheer scale of the Moai is staggering. Some of these statues weigh over 80 tons, towering over 20 feet tall. Imagine the effort, the ingenuity, the sheer manpower required to carve these monoliths from the quarry, to transport them across the rugged terrain, and to erect them on ceremonial platforms. Without modern machinery, without the wheel, they accomplished what seems impossible. The prevailing theory is that they used ingenious techniques involving logs and ropes. They would have laid logs in front of the statues and then used ropes, likely made from the abundant palm fibers, to pull and maneuver them. It would have been a slow, arduous process, requiring the coordinated efforts of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Each Moai represented not just artistic skill, but immense tribal power, prestige, and a profound reverence for the past. These monumental statues were not placed randomly. They stood proudly on ceremonial platforms called ahu, often located along the coast, facing inland towards the villages. These ahu were the focal points of community life. They were sacred sites where rituals and ceremonies were performed, reinforcing the social order, celebrating achievements, and appeasing the ancestral spirits. The Moai, in their silent vigil, were integral to the spiritual and social fabric of Rapa Nui. The society itself was hierarchical, led by powerful chiefs and priests. These leaders commanded the immense labor required for the carving and transportation of the Moai, as well as other large-scale projects. Below them were skilled artisans who possessed the knowledge and techniques to carve the stone, farmers who cultivated the land, and fishermen who provided sustenance from the sea. This division of labor allowed for the specialization and organization necessary to undertake such monumental tasks. However, this period of prosperity, this flourishing civilization, was not without its challenges. And the very success of the Rapa Nui people, their ingenuity and their drive, ultimately sowed the seeds of their own downfall. The island's resources, though initially abundant, were finite. Over generations, the precious palm forests, the backbone of their infrastructure, were gradually depleted. They were used to move the Moai, to build canoes, and to clear land for agriculture. This extensive deforestation led to severe soil erosion, stripping away the fertile topsoil that sustained their crops. Compounding the human impact, evidence suggests that the island also experienced periods of severe drought. These climatic shifts further stressed the already fragile environment, making it increasingly difficult to sustain a growing population on diminishing resources. The delicate balance between human needs and the island's capacity was being irrevocably disrupted. As resources dwindled, a dark shadow fell over Rapa Nui. Competition intensified. The once unified society began to fracture. The clans, once bound together by shared traditions and common goals, found themselves in conflict. The Moai, once symbols of unity and ancestral power, became targets. They were deliberately toppled, their faces defaced, a stark visual representation of the collapse of old beliefs and the triumph of rival factions in a desperate struggle for survival. Then, in the 18th century, The arrival of European explorers marked a new, devastating chapter in the island's history. Diseases, against which the islanders had no immunity, swept through the population, decimating their numbers. This was followed by slave raids in the mid-19th century, which further reduced their population to a mere handful. From an estimated peak of 15,000 people, the population plummeted to just over 100 by the late 19th century. The vibrant culture that had carved the Moai and built a complex society was on the brink of extinction. Today, the descendants of the original Rapa Nui people are striving to preserve their unique heritage. Efforts are underway to restore the Moai, to protect the fragile environment, and to teach the Rapa Nui language and traditions to new generations. Their story is a poignant reminder of humanity's delicate relationship with its environment. While multiple factors contributed to its decline, from resource mismanagement to external impacts, it stands as a powerful cautionary tale about sustainability, resilience, and the enduring mysteries of our shared past. Around 1200 AD, a remarkable chapter in human history began to unfold on the desolate shores of Rapa Nui. This wasn't a story of accidental discovery, but one of deliberate courage and incredible navigational prowess. Imagine, if you will, a group of Polynesian seafarers, their hearts filled with a potent mix of daring and destiny, setting sail across the vast, unbroken expanse of the Pacific Ocean. These weren't mere fishermen venturing out for a day's catch. These were intrepid explorers, charting a course into the unknown, guided by the celestial bodies, the subtle shifts in ocean currents, and an intimate understanding of the natural world honed over generations. The prevailing wisdom points to the Marquesas or Gambier Islands as the likely points of origin for these courageous voyagers. Picture their vessels, sturdy outrigger canoes, double-hulled for stability, propelled by the wind and the tireless efforts of their crews. These were not the sleek, metal ships of modern exploration, but marvels of indigenous engineering, crafted from wood and woven fibers, designed to withstand the immense power of the ocean. The journey itself would have been a test of endurance, a relentless battle against the elements, with no land visible for thousands of miles. They were venturing into a world where the horizon was their only constant, a canvas of endless blue stretching in every direction. What motivated such a perilous undertaking? Perhaps it was a combination of factors: population pressure on their home islands, a desire for new lands, or simply the innate human spirit of exploration, the yearning to discover what lay beyond the familiar. Whatever the impetus, their arrival on Rapa Nui marked the beginning of a new era, the genesis of a unique civilization in one of the most isolated corners of the globe. Upon reaching this virgin land, these Polynesian pioneers didn't arrive empty-handed. They were not merely adventurers seeking new territory. They were founders, bringing with them the very essence of their culture and the vital resources necessary for survival and prosperity. They carried with them the essential plants that would form the foundation of their agriculture: taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, and coconuts. These were not just food sources. They were the building blocks of a new society, the sustenance that would allow them to put down roots and flourish. Crucially, they also brought with them animals, chickens, and pigs. These creatures would provide protein, enrich the soil through their waste, and become integral to the island's ecosystem and the Rapa Nui diet. Imagine the careful tending of these precious cargo, the hope that these seeds and animals would take hold and thrive in this new environment. This was a calculated risk, a testament to their foresight and their commitment to establishing a sustainable future. But beyond the tangible provisions, these navigators brought something even more profound: the seeds of a new society. They brought their social structures, their customs, their languages, their spiritual beliefs, and their ancestral knowledge. They were not a disorganized horde. They were a community, possessing the organizational skills and the cultural framework to establish order and build a functioning society from the ground up. They transplanted not just flora and fauna, but the very DNA of their civilization onto this remote volcanic island. This act of discovery and settlement was not a singular event, but likely a series of voyages over time, with different groups contributing to the island's nascent population. Over centuries, these initial arrivals would intermarry, adapt, and evolve, forging a distinct identity that would become known as the Rapa Nui people. Their isolation, while a challenge, also provided a unique canvas upon which to paint their cultural masterpiece, free from the influences and conflicts of larger, continental civilizations. The island itself, Rapa Nui, offered a fertile, albeit limited, environment for this new society to take root. Its volcanic soil was rich, and for a considerable period, the island was blessed with abundant natural resources, most notably its magnificent palm forests. These forests were not merely a scenic backdrop, they were the lifeblood of the early Rapa Nui civilization. The wood provided the essential materials for building homes, for crafting tools, and most importantly, for constructing the remarkable canoes that would allow them to exploit the bounty of the surrounding ocean and to connect with their new world. The arrival of these Polynesian navigators and the establishment of their society on Rapa Nui is a testament to the extraordinary capabilities of early human migration and adaptation. It speaks to their courage in facing the unknown, their ingenuity in mastering the challenges of long-distance sea travel, and their resilience in building a new life in an isolated and demanding environment. They were not simply survivors. They were pioneers who laid the groundwork for a civilization that would, in time, achieve astonishing feats of art, engineering, and social organization, leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate and mystify us to this day. This journey across the vast Pacific was not just about finding a new island. It was about the beginning of a unique human story, a story etched in stone and whispered on the winds of time. For centuries, the Rapa Nui people flourished. Their population grew, supported by fertile soil and abundant palm forests. This period saw the rise of a complex society with intricate social structures and a deep spiritual connection to their ancestors. This era, often referred to as the Classic Period by archaeologists, represents the zenith of Rapa Nui civilization, a time when their unique culture reached its most profound expression. It was a time of relative peace and prosperity, where the island's bounty allowed for the development of sophisticated societal organization and the pursuit of grand artistic and engineering endeavors. Imagine a society meticulously organized, with a clear hierarchy that facilitated the monumental tasks they undertook. At the apex were the chiefs, the Ariki, who held both spiritual and political power. These were not mere leaders. They were seen as intermediaries between the mortal realm and the divine, descendants of the very gods and ancestors who had guided the first navigators to this isolated land. Their authority was absolute, derived from their lineage and their ability to maintain harmony with the natural and spiritual worlds. Beneath them were the priests, the keepers of sacred knowledge, the interpreters of omens, and the officiants of the complex rituals that governed Rapa Nui life. The success of this hierarchical structure was evident in the sheer scale of their achievements. The island wasn't just a place to live, it was a canvas for their beliefs, a testament to their reverence for the past and their aspirations for the future. This period witnessed the flourishing of their most iconic legacy, the Moai. These weren't just sculptures. They were far more than inert stone. The Moai were believed to embody the spirits of deified ancestors, powerful beings who had once walked the earth and who, even in death, continued to watch over the villages and protect the island. Each statue was a tangible link to the past, a living monument to the lineage and power of the clan that commissioned it. The creation of a Moai was a sacred undertaking, a process that involved the entire community, from the quarry workers who painstakingly extracted the volcanic tuff to the skilled carvers who breathed life into the stone. These were not mass-produced items. Each Moai was unique, a personalized representation of an ancestor, imbued with a distinct personality and spiritual power. The sheer size of these figures, some reaching over 30 feet tall and weighing upwards of 80 tons, speaks volumes about the Rapa Nui people's organizational capabilities, their engineering ingenuity, and their unwavering dedication to their spiritual beliefs. The process of carving a Moai was a testament to their mastery of stone. They used basalt tools, painstakingly chipping away at the soft volcanic rock. The characteristic long ears, the prominent noses, the deep-set eyes. These were not arbitrary features, but deliberate choices intended to convey power, dignity, and the enduring presence of the ancestor. Once carved, the moai would be transported from the Rapa Nui quarries, often across the island's rugged terrain, to their final resting places. The exact methods of transport remain a subject of debate, but the most widely accepted theory involves the use of wooden rollers, likely made from the island's abundant palm trees, and a massive collective effort, pulling the statues with ropes made from plant fibers. Imagine the scene: hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people working in unison, their chants and rhythmic movements synchronized with the arduous task of moving these colossal figures. It was a feat of engineering and social coordination that continues to astound modern observers. These magnificent figures were not simply placed randomly around the island. They were erected on ceremonial platforms known as ahu. These ahu were more than just bases for the moai. They were the spiritual and social centers of the Rapa Nui communities. Often located along the coast, facing inland towards the villages, the ahu were sacred sites where important rituals and ceremonies took place. Here, offerings were made, important decisions were discussed, and the social order was reinforced. The moai, standing sentinel on these platforms, were the silent witnesses to the ebb and flow of Rapa Nui life, their gaze fixed on the land and the people they were meant to protect. The alignment of the ahu and the moai with celestial events further underscores the Rapa Nui people's sophisticated understanding of astronomy and their deep connection to the cosmos. The spiritual connection to their ancestors was not confined to the moai. It permeated every aspect of Rapa Nui life. Their belief system was animistic, with spirits residing in natural phenomena, in the land, and in the very stones of the island. They believed in a pantheon of gods and demigods, many of whom were associated with the sea, the sky, and the fertility of the land. Their mythology was rich and complex, passed down through generations via oral traditions, songs, and intricate carvings. This deep spiritual connection provided a framework for their lives, guiding their actions, shaping their worldview, and fostering a sense of unity and purpose within their society. The fertile soil and abundant palm forests were crucial to this flourishing period. The volcanic soil provided an excellent base for agriculture, allowing them to cultivate crops like taro, sweet potatoes, and bananas. The palm trees, as mentioned, were indispensable for construction, for crafting tools, and for building the canoes that enabled them to fish and explore the waters around the island. The abundance of these resources allowed for a surplus of food, which in turn supported a growing population and freed up labor for specialized tasks such as statue carving and ceremonial construction. This period was characterized by a delicate balance, where the island's resources were seemingly sufficient to meet the needs of the Rapa Nui people. The intricate social structures were not just about power and hierarchy, they were also about cooperation and resource management. The success of the Moai projects, for instance, required a high degree of coordination and labor allocation. Clans likely worked together, with different groups responsible for specific stages of the process, from quarrying the stone to transporting and erecting the statues. This collaborative spirit, fostered by shared spiritual beliefs and a common cultural identity, was a hallmark of Rapa Nui society during this prosperous era. The period of flourishing was not merely about survival, it was about the creation of a sophisticated and distinctive culture. The Rapa Nui people developed a unique art form, a complex social organization, and a profound spiritual understanding of their place in the universe. Their achievements, particularly the creation of the Moai, stand as a testament to their ingenuity, their perseverance, and their deep connection to their ancestors. This era represents a golden age, a period when the Rapa Nui people, in their isolation, forged a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on human history, a legacy that continues to inspire awe and to pose enduring questions about the nature of human achievement and the forces that shape societies. The most iconic legacy of Rapa Nui, the enduring symbol of this remote island civilization, are the Moai. These aren't just colossal stone statues. They are far more than inert rock. Carved from the island's volcanic tuff, they represent the pinnacle of Rapa Nui artistry, engineering, and spiritual devotion. Imagine these monumental figures, some reaching over 30 feet tall and weighing as much as 80 tons, standing sentinel across the landscape. Their sheer scale is breathtaking, a testament to the incredible ingenuity and sheer willpower of the people who created them. But to understand the Moai, we must look beyond their physical form. These were not mere decorative sculptures or expressions of artistic whim. The Rapa Nui people believed that the Moai embodied the spirits of their deified ancestors. These were not just dead relatives, they were powerful beings, once mortals who had achieved a divine status, and whose spirits, through the Moai, continued to watch over the villages and protect the island. Each statue was a living link to the past, a tangible manifestation of ancestral power and spiritual presence. They were the island's guardians, their silent gaze fixed on the land and its inhabitants, a constant reminder of the divine and the ancestral lineage that sustained their society. The creation of a Moai was a monumental undertaking, a process that involved the entire community and spanned generations. It began in the quarries, often located inland, where skilled artisans, using only basalt tools, painstakingly chipped away at the soft volcanic rock. The process was arduous, demanding immense patience and precision. The characteristic features of the Moai, the elongated ears, the prominent noses, the deep-set eyes, were not accidental. They were deliberate artistic choices, imbued with meaning, designed to convey power, dignity, and the enduring spirit of the ancestor they represented. Once carved, the journey of the Moai from the quarry to their final resting places was an epic feat of engineering and social organization. Without the wheel, without modern machinery, these multi-ton giants had to be moved across the island's rugged terrain. The most widely accepted theory suggests the use of wooden rollers, likely made from the island's abundant palm trees. Imagine the scene: hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people working in unison, their chants and rhythmic movements synchronized with the arduous task of pulling these colossal figures. Ropes, meticulously crafted from plant fibers, would have been used to haul and maneuver the statues. It was a slow, deliberate process, requiring immense coordination and a shared purpose. Each pull, each shift, was a testament to their collective strength and their unwavering dedication to honoring their ancestors. These magnificent statues were not placed randomly. They were erected on ceremonial platforms known as ahu. These ahu were far more than just bases for the Moai. They were the spiritual and social centers of the Rapa Nui communities. Often strategically located along the coast, facing inland towards the villages, the ahu were sacred sites where important rituals and ceremonies took place. Here, offerings were made to the ancestors, important decisions were discussed, and the social order was reinforced. The Moai, standing sentinel on these platforms, were the silent witnesses to the ebb and flow of Rapa Nui life, their presence a constant affirmation of their cultural identity and spiritual beliefs. The alignment of the ahu and the Moai with celestial events further underscores the Rapa Nui people's sophisticated understanding of astronomy and their deep connection to the cosmos. The sheer number of Moai, estimated to be around 900, speaks to the immense importance placed on ancestor veneration and the dedication of the Rapa Nui people to this practice. Each Moai represented a significant investment of labor, resources, and time. The creation and transport of these statues were not merely acts of artistic expression but were deeply intertwined with the social and political structure of the island. The ability to commission, carve, and transport a Moai was a demonstration of a clan's power, prestige, and influence. It was a way of solidifying their status, honoring their lineage, and asserting their dominance within the complex social hierarchy of Rapa Nui. The Moai were not static objects. They were dynamic elements within the Rapa Nui worldview, imbued with spiritual energy and believed to influence the world around them. The Rapa Nui people believed that the Moai possessed a spiritual power, or mana, that could bring fertility to the land, ensure good harvests, and protect them from harm. This belief system fueled the continuous production of Moai, as each generation sought to honor its ancestors and to maintain this vital connection to the spiritual realm. The variety in the Moai also tells a story. While many share a similar imposing physique, with long torsos, prominent noses, and deep-set eyes, there are subtle differences in their carving styles, reflecting the work of different carvers and perhaps different periods of creation. Some Moai even had coral eyes inlaid with obsidian or red scoria, giving them a more lifelike and imposing appearance. The distinctive pukeo, cylindrical topknots carved from red scoria, were added to some Moai, further enhancing their grandeur and perhaps symbolizing the hair or headdresses of the ancestors they represented. The Moai are more than just ancient statues. They are a profound testament to the human capacity for belief, for artistic expression, and for monumental achievement, even in the face of extreme isolation and limited resources. They are the tangible embodiment of a complex spiritual system, a reflection of a society deeply connected to its ancestors and its land. They are the enduring legacy of the Rapa Nui people, a silent, stoic reminder of their triumphs, their ingenuity, and the deep mysteries that still shroud this extraordinary civilization. The sheer scale of the Moai is staggering. These aren't just large statues, they are colossal monoliths, each weighing many tons, some even exceeding 80 tons. Imagine the challenge, the sheer monumental effort required to quarry these massive figures from the volcanic rock, to shape them with only primitive tools, and then, most incredibly, to transport them across the island's rugged terrain. This wasn't a task for a few individuals. It demanded the coordinated effort of an entire community, a testament to their organizational skills and their unwavering dedication to their ancestors. The exact methods used to transport and erect these multi-ton giants without the benefit of modern machinery remain a subject of fascination and scholarly debate. However, the most widely accepted theory, supported by archaeological evidence and traditional knowledge, points to ingenious techniques involving logs and ropes. Picture this. The Rapa Nui people would have used large, sturdy logs, likely harvested from the island's once abundant palm forests, as rollers. These logs would have been placed beneath the base of the Moai, creating a makeshift track. Then, using ropes, meticulously crafted from plant fibers, teams of men would have hauled the statues forward, inch by painstaking inch. Imagine the scene: hundreds, perhaps thousands, of individuals working in unison. Their efforts would have been synchronized by chants and rhythmic movements, a collective endeavor driven by a shared purpose. The ropes would have been wrapped around the statue, with teams pulling in unison, their muscles straining against the immense weight. As the Moai moved, the logs at the rear would have been moved to the front, creating a continuous rolling path. This process would have been incredibly slow and arduous, requiring immense patience, resilience, and a profound understanding of leverage and mechanics. It's a feat of engineering that, even by today's standards, is awe-inspiring. The journey from the quarry to the ahu, the ceremonial platforms, could have spanned miles across uneven terrain, through valleys and over hills. The Rapa Nui people would have had to navigate natural obstacles, adapting their techniques to the varying landscape. They might have used ramps and levers to overcome inclines, and specialized ropes for precise maneuvering. The sheer ingenuity required to move such immense weights with such limited resources is a testament to their mastery of their environment and their practical intelligence. Once the Moai reached their destination, the challenge of erection presented another formidable hurdle. Again, the use of logs and ropes would have been crucial. The statue would have been carefully maneuvered into its upright position, likely using a system of levers and a carefully constructed ramp. The base of the ahu would have been prepared, a solid foundation to support the immense weight. Imagine the tension, the collective held breath, as the final efforts were made to bring the Moai to its feet, to stand tall and imposing, facing the village. Each Moai was more than just a statue. It was a symbol, imbued with deep meaning and significance. Each one represented tribal power and prestige. The ability of a clan to commission, carve, transport, and erect a Moai was a direct reflection of its strength, its wealth, and its influence within Rapa Nui society. The larger and more elaborate the Moai, the greater the status of the clan that sponsored it. This monumental undertaking was a public declaration of their power and their lineage. Furthermore, Each moai symbolized a profound reverence for the past, for the ancestors who had shaped their world. These statues were believed to embody the spirits of deified ancestors, powerful beings who continued to watch over and protect the living. By creating and honoring these moai, the Rapa Nui people maintained a vital connection to their ancestral lineage, ensuring the continuity of their culture and their spiritual well-being. The moai were not just monuments to the dead, they were active participants in the lives of the living, their presence a constant source of spiritual strength and guidance. The process of creating and moving the moai also fostered a strong sense of community and cooperation. It required the mobilization of vast numbers of people, transcending individual clans and uniting them in a common purpose. This shared endeavor would have reinforced social bonds, promoted a sense of collective identity, and solidified the hierarchical structure of Rapa Nui society, with chiefs and priests directing these immense projects. The success of these undertakings was a reflection of the social cohesion and the effective leadership that characterized the island during its golden age. The sheer number of moai, estimated to be around 900, scattered across the island, speaks volumes about the scale of these efforts and the pervasive nature of ancestor veneration in Rapa Nui culture. It suggests that for centuries, a significant portion of the island's labor and resources was dedicated to the creation and maintenance of these monumental statues. This sustained commitment underscores the deep spiritual and social importance that the moai held for the Rapa Nui people. The story of transporting and erecting these multi-ton giants is a powerful illustration of human ingenuity and resilience in the face of daunting challenges. It highlights the capacity of a society, even one isolated and without advanced technology, to achieve feats that seem almost impossible. The moai stand not only as artistic marvels, but as enduring symbols of the Rapa Nui people's determination, their spiritual devotion, and their profound connection to their ancestors, a connection so strong that it inspired them to move mountains of stone across their island home. The moai, these magnificent stone sentinels, didn't simply stand randomly across the Rapa Nui landscape. Their placement was deliberate, strategic, and deeply interwoven with the spiritual and social fabric of the island. They stood proudly on ceremonial platforms, structures known as ahu. These ahu were far more than mere foundations. They were the heart of Rapa Nui society, the focal points of community life, where rituals and ceremonies reinforced the social order and solidified their spiritual beliefs. Imagine these ahu, raised platforms, often rectangular or trapezoidal in shape, meticulously constructed from carefully fitted stones. They were typically located along the coast, strategically positioned to face inland, towards the villages. This orientation was no accident. It was a deliberate act of connection, a visual link between the sacred space of the ahu and the everyday lives of the Rapa Nui people. The ahu, and the moai that stood upon them, were meant to be seen, to be revered, and to constantly remind the community of their obligations to the ancestors and to the divine. The construction of an ahu was itself a monumental undertaking, requiring immense labor, expertise, and meticulous planning. The stones, often volcanic rock, were carefully selected, shaped, and fitted together with remarkable precision. Some ahu were simple, consisting of a basic platform, while others were elaborate, featuring intricate stonework, ramps, and even paved areas. The scale and complexity of each ahu often reflected the status and influence of the clan that commissioned it. The more elaborate the ahu, the more powerful the clan, and the greater their perceived connection to the ancestral spirits. The ahu served as the primary ceremonial centers for the Rapa Nui people. They were the places where rituals and ceremonies were performed to honor the ancestors, to appease the gods, and to reinforce the social order. These ceremonies were not simply symbolic acts. They were believed to have a direct impact on the well-being of the community, influencing the harvest, the weather, and the overall prosperity of the island. The rituals performed on the ahu were a vital link between the mortal world and the spiritual realm, ensuring the continued harmony and balance of Rapa Nui society. The moai, standing tall upon the ahu, played a central role in these ceremonies. They were not passive observers. They were active participants, embodying the spirits of the ancestors and channeling their power. The rituals often involved offerings, prayers, and chants directed towards the Moai, seeking their blessings and guidance. The specific rituals varied, but they often included processions, music, dance, and elaborate feasts. The entire community would participate in these ceremonies, uniting them in a shared sense of purpose and identity. The Ahu were also the sites where important social events took place, reinforcing the social hierarchy and solidifying the power of the ruling elite. The chiefs and priests, the Ariki, held positions of immense authority, and they played a central role in all ceremonial activities. The ceremonies performed on the Ahu served to legitimize their power, reinforcing their status as intermediaries between the mortal realm and the divine. The elaborate rituals and ceremonies, often involving complex choreography and symbolic gestures, served to remind the community of the social order and the importance of obedience to the ruling elite. The location of the Ahu, often along the coast, also served a practical purpose. The coast was a vital source of resources for the Rapa Nui people, providing access to the sea for fishing and transportation. The Ahu, therefore, were conveniently located near the sources of sustenance, allowing the community to combine their spiritual practices with their daily lives. The proximity to the ocean also linked the Rapa Nui people to their ancestors, who were believed to have arrived on the island by sea. The Ahu, therefore, served as a symbolic gateway, connecting the present with the past and the mortal world with the spiritual realm. The Ahu and the Moai were also used for astronomical observations and calendrical calculations. The alignment of the Ahu with celestial events, such as solstices and equinoxes, suggests that the Rapa Nui people had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and used this knowledge to regulate their agricultural practices and to mark important religious holidays. The Ahu, therefore, were not just ceremonial centers, they were also observatories, reflecting the Rapa Nui people's deep connection to the cosmos and their ability to integrate their spiritual beliefs with their scientific understanding. The Ahu and the Moai were integral to the Rapa Nui people's sense of identity and cultural continuity. The creation and maintenance of these structures required a sustained commitment from the entire community, uniting them in a shared purpose. The rituals and ceremonies performed on the Ahu reinforced their shared values, their beliefs, and their history. The Moai, standing as silent witnesses to the passage of time, served as a constant reminder of their ancestral legacy and their enduring connection to the land. The Ahu and the Moai were not static objects, they were dynamic elements within the Rapa Nui worldview. Over time, the Ahu were modified, expanded, and sometimes even destroyed, reflecting shifts in the social and political landscape. The Moai themselves were subject to changes, with some being toppled or defaced, often as a result of conflict or changes in religious beliefs. The history of the Ahu and the Moai, therefore, is a dynamic story of adaptation, change, and the enduring power of cultural expression. The study of the Ahu and the Moai provides valuable insights into the complexities of Rapa Nui society. By examining the construction techniques, the architectural features, and the ceremonial practices associated with these structures, archaeologists and historians have been able to reconstruct the social organization, the religious beliefs, and the political dynamics of the Rapa Nui people. The Ahu and the Moai, therefore, are not just remnants of a lost civilization. They are invaluable sources of information, providing clues to the mysteries of the past and helping us to understand the triumphs and tragedies of human history. The legacy of the Ahu and the Moai continues to resonate today. They stand as powerful symbols of the Rapa Nui people's ingenuity, their resilience, and their profound connection to their ancestors and their land. They are a reminder of the importance of cultural heritage, the enduring power of spiritual beliefs, and the fragility of human civilizations. The story of the Ahu and the Moai is a testament to the enduring human spirit, a story that continues to inspire awe and to pose enduring questions about the nature of human achievement and the mysteries of our shared past. The Ahu, the ceremonial platforms, and the Moai, the silent guardians, continue to tell their story on the shores of Rapa Nui, a story of a people who created a unique and remarkable civilization, leaving behind a legacy that will endure for generations to come. The Rapa Nui society, during its flourishing period, was a complex and highly organized entity. It wasn't a collection of disparate individuals living in isolation. It was a structured community, a hierarchy, where roles and responsibilities were clearly defined. At the apex of this pyramid of power were the chiefs and the priests. These individuals held immense authority, wielding both political and spiritual influence over the entire island. Their leadership was essential, not only for the day-to-day functioning of the society, but also for the grand endeavors that defined the Rapa Nui civilization. The chiefs, the Ariki, were more than just rulers. They were considered to be descendants of the gods, intermediaries between the mortal realm and the divine. Their lineage was paramount, their claim to power rooted in their ancestral connection to the first settlers of Rapa Nui. They inherited their positions, passing down their authority from one generation to the next, ensuring the continuity of leadership and the stability of the social order. They were responsible for making important decisions, for resolving disputes, and for maintaining the well-being of the community. Their word was law, and their commands were carried out without question. The priests, the Tohunga, were the keepers of sacred knowledge, the interpreters of omens, and the officiants of the complex rituals that governed every aspect of Rapa Nui life. They possessed a deep understanding of the spiritual world, of the gods, the ancestors, and the forces that shaped their destiny. They conducted the ceremonies on the Ahu, the ceremonial platforms, where prayers were offered, sacrifices were made, and the connection between the living and the dead was maintained. They were the guardians of tradition, ensuring that the ancient customs and beliefs were passed down through generations. They were also skilled healers, using their knowledge of herbs and rituals to cure illnesses and to protect the community from harm. Together, the chiefs and the priests formed the ruling elite, controlling the resources, the labor, and the spiritual life of the island. They commanded the immense manpower required for the carving, transportation, and erection of the Moai, the colossal stone statues that stand as the enduring symbol of Rapa Nui. They organized the construction of the Ahu, the ceremonial platforms, and they oversaw the agricultural practices that sustained the population. Their authority was absolute, and their decisions shaped the destiny of the Rapa Nui people. The power of the chiefs and priests was not simply based on their lineage or their spiritual authority. It was also maintained through their control over the resources of the island. They controlled the distribution of land, the allocation of labor, and the access to essential goods and services. They were able to amass wealth and to use it to enhance their status and to reward their loyal followers. This created a system of patronage, where individuals relied on the chiefs and priests for their livelihood and their well-being. Beneath the ruling elite were the skilled artisans, the farmers, and the fishermen, the backbone of the Rapa Nui community. These individuals formed the productive core of the society, providing the resources and the skills necessary for the survival and prosperity of the island. They were not merely laborers, they were specialists, each with their own unique expertise and contribution to make. The skilled artisans were the creators, the artists, the craftspeople who brought the vision of the chiefs and priests to life. They included the skilled stone carvers who meticulously sculpted the Moai from the volcanic rock, transforming the raw material into the iconic statues that would stand as monuments to their ancestors. They also included the builders, the carpenters, the weavers, and the other craftspeople who constructed the houses, the canoes, and the other essential structures and objects that were necessary for daily life. They were the ones who possessed the technical knowledge and the artistic talent to create the material culture of Rapa Nui. The farmers were the cultivators of the land, the ones who provided the food that sustained the population. They understood the rhythms of the seasons, the properties of the soil, and the techniques of agriculture. They carefully tended their crops, ensuring that the community had enough food to survive. They cultivated taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, and other crops that were essential to the Rapa Nui diet. They also understood the importance of managing the land sustainably, ensuring that the soil remained fertile and that the harvests were plentiful. The fishermen were the harvesters of the sea, the ones who provided the protein that supplemented the agricultural diet. They were skilled navigators, using their knowledge of the currents, the winds, and the stars to navigate the waters around the island. They used canoes, crafted from wood, to venture out into the ocean, where they fished for a variety of species, including tuna, marlin, and other fish. They also collected shellfish and other marine resources that were essential to the diet of the Rapa Nui people. The relationship between the ruling elite and the working class was complex and multifaceted. The chiefs and priests relied on the skilled artisans, the farmers, and the fishermen for their labor and their resources. They organized and directed the activities of these individuals, ensuring that the society functioned smoothly. In return, the chiefs and priests provided protection, leadership, and access to resources. They also ensured that the rituals and ceremonies were performed, maintaining the spiritual harmony of the community. The labor required for the carving, transportation, and erection of the moai was immense. The chiefs and priests organized the workforce, assigning tasks and coordinating the efforts of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. This required a high degree of social organization and leadership. The skilled artisans were responsible for the carving, while the farmers and fishermen provided the food and resources necessary to sustain the workforce. The process of moving the moai across the island, often over difficult terrain, was a testament to the Rapa Nui people's ingenuity and their ability to work together towards a common goal. The hierarchical structure of Rapa Nui society was not static, it evolved over time. As the population grew and the resources of the island became increasingly strained, competition for power and resources intensified. The chiefs and priests faced challenges to their authority, and the social order was sometimes disrupted by conflict. However, the basic structure of the society remained largely intact throughout the flourishing period. The hierarchical structure of Rapa Nui society was essential for the creation of the moai and the development of their unique culture. It allowed for the mobilization of labor, the efficient use of resources, and the maintenance of social order. The chiefs and priests provided leadership and direction, while the skilled artisans, the farmers, and the fishermen provided the skills and the resources necessary for the survival and prosperity of the island. This intricate system, while ultimately fragile, allowed the Rapa Nui people to create a civilization that continues to fascinate and inspire us today. However, the golden age of Rapa Nui, the era of flourishing and monumental achievements, came at a price. It wasn't a sudden catastrophe, a single event that brought about the downfall. Instead, it was a gradual erosion, a slow burn, fueled by the very forces that had initially propelled their success. Over generations, the island's precious resources, the very foundation upon which their civilization was built, were systematically depleted. This was the tragic paradox of Rapa Nui. Their ingenuity, their ambition, their reverence for their ancestors ultimately led them down a path of environmental destruction. The most visible casualty of this unsustainable trajectory was the island's majestic palm forests. Imagine a landscape once dominated by towering trees, a dense canopy of green providing shelter, sustenance, and the raw materials essential for survival. These weren't just any trees, they were giant palms, a species that no longer exists on Rapa Nui. They were magnificent, providing the very lifeblood of the Rapa Nui civilization. They were the unsung heroes of their story, their quiet sacrifice contributing to the rise and, ultimately, the fall of this remarkable culture. The palm forests were indispensable to the Rapa Nui people. Their wood provided the timber for building homes, for constructing canoes, and for crafting the tools and implements necessary for everyday life. The strong, flexible wood was perfectly suited for building the outrigger canoes that were crucial for fishing, for exploring the waters around the island, and for connecting with the wider world. Without the canoes, their access to the ocean's bounty would have been severely limited, impacting their food supply and their ability to thrive. But the most significant demand on the palm forests came from the construction and, crucially, the transport of the moai. As we've discussed, these colossal statues required immense effort and ingenuity to carve, move, and erect. The primary method of transport, as the evidence suggests, involved the use of wooden rollers. These rollers, made from the trunks of the giant palm trees, were placed beneath the statues, creating a makeshift track across the island's rugged terrain. Imagine the scale of this operation. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of logs needed to be felled, transported, and constantly repositioned to facilitate the movement of these multi-ton giants. The process was incredibly resource-intensive. Each moai, each symbol of ancestral power, each testament to their cultural prowess, came at a cost. The more moai they created, the more trees they needed. The more trees they felled, the more quickly the forests disappeared. This wasn't a conscious act of destruction, not a deliberate assault on their environment. It was, rather, a consequence of their beliefs, their ambitions, and their relentless pursuit of honoring their ancestors. They were so focused on the spiritual significance of the moai, on the societal prestige they brought, that they failed to fully appreciate the environmental consequences of their actions. They were, in a sense, victims of their own success, trapped in a cycle of resource depletion driven by their cultural imperatives. Beyond the use of the trees for moving the moai, the wood was also essential for building the ramps and levers that were likely used to erect the statues. This process required a vast amount of timber, further contributing to the deforestation of the island. The construction of the ceremonial platforms, the ahu, also demanded significant quantities of wood for scaffolding, for the construction of ramps, and for other structural elements. Every aspect of the Moai project, from quarrying to erection, was inextricably linked to the exploitation of the island's precious forests. Building canoes also played a significant role in deforestation. Canoes were vital for fishing, and fishing was a primary source of food for the Rapa Nui people. As the population grew, the demand for canoes increased, putting further pressure on the palm forests. The larger the canoe, the more wood was required, and the more trees were felled. The canoes were not only used for fishing, they were also essential for transporting goods, for connecting with other parts of the island, and for facilitating social interactions. Furthermore, as the population expanded, the need for agricultural land increased. The Rapa Nui people cleared vast swathes of the forest to create fields for growing crops. They cultivated taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, and other essential foods. The process of clearing the land involved burning down the trees, which not only contributed to deforestation but also released carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, potentially contributing to climate change and further exacerbating the environmental challenges they faced. This agricultural expansion, while necessary to feed a growing population, had a devastating impact on the island's ecosystem. The removal of the forests exposed the soil to the elements, making it vulnerable to erosion. The roots of the trees held the soil in place, preventing it from being washed away by the rain and the wind. When the trees were removed, the soil became unstable, and erosion became a serious problem. The consequences of deforestation were far-reaching and devastating. As the forests disappeared, the island's ecosystem began to unravel. The loss of the trees led to a decrease in rainfall, as the trees played a crucial role in the water cycle. The trees helped to absorb water from the ground and release it into the atmosphere, contributing to the formation of clouds and rainfall. Without the trees, the island became drier, and the climate became more unpredictable. The loss of the forests also led to a decline in biodiversity. The trees provided habitat for a variety of animals and plants. As the forests disappeared, these species lost their homes and their food sources. The island's ecosystem became less diverse and less resilient. The loss of the forests also impacted the Rapa Nui people's access to resources. They lost access to the wood they needed for building homes, canoes, and tools. They also lost access to the plants and animals that lived in the forests. The most immediate and visible consequence of deforestation was severe soil erosion. The fertile topsoil, the very foundation of their agricultural system, was gradually washed away by the rain and the wind. The fields became less productive, and the yields of their crops declined. This led to food shortages, malnutrition, and increased competition for dwindling resources. The erosion also impacted the water quality, as the eroded soil polluted the streams and the coastal waters. The erosion eventually rendered large areas of land unusable for agriculture, further exacerbating the food shortages. The deforestation and the resulting soil erosion created a vicious cycle. As the soil eroded, the land became less fertile, and the Rapa Nui people were forced to clear more land to compensate for the decline in agricultural productivity. This further accelerated the deforestation process, leading to even more erosion and a more degraded environment. The spiral of environmental decline was relentless, impacting every aspect of Rapa Nui life. The depletion of the palm forests was not the only factor contributing to the environmental degradation of Rapa Nui. The introduction of rats, likely carried on the canoes of the Polynesian settlers, also played a significant role. These rats, with no natural predators on the island, multiplied rapidly, consuming the seeds of the palm trees and preventing their regeneration. This further contributed to the decline of the forests and made it even more difficult for the trees to recover from the effects of deforestation. The combined effects of deforestation, soil erosion, and the introduction of rats created an environmental crisis that ultimately undermined the Rapa Nui civilization. They were trapped in a self-destructive cycle, their actions driven by their cultural beliefs and their need to survive, but ultimately leading to the collapse of their society. The very resources that had allowed them to flourish, their abundant forests, their fertile soil, their ingenuity, became the instruments of their downfall. The story of Rapa Nui is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and the environment, and the devastating consequences of unsustainable practices. Their tragic story, etched in the landscape of a remote island, serves as a powerful warning for us today, a reminder that our actions have consequences and that we must strive to live in harmony with the natural world. Compounding the human impact, a series of environmental challenges further stress the island's already fragile ecosystem. Evidence suggests that Rapa Nui experienced periods of severe drought. Imagine the island, once blessed with rainfall, now facing prolonged dry spells. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a devastating blow to a society entirely dependent on its natural resources. The fertile volcanic soil, already suffering from erosion due to deforestation, became increasingly parched. Crops, the lifeblood of the Rapa Nui people, struggled to grow. The sweet potatoes, taro, and bananas that had sustained them for centuries yielded smaller harvests, or worse, failed entirely. These droughts would have been particularly brutal for a population that had grown accustomed to abundance. The careful management of water resources, which would have been crucial in such a climate, may have been insufficient or simply overwhelmed by the prolonged lack of rain. The island's limited freshwater sources, perhaps streams and natural springs, would have been severely depleted. This scarcity would have created immense pressure on an already strained society. The droughts weren't isolated events. They were likely cyclical, returning with a vengeance after brief periods of reprieve. Each drought would have further weakened the land, making it even more difficult to sustain a growing population on diminishing resources. The cycle of environmental stress became a relentless force, tightening its grip on the Rapa Nui people. Think about the psychological toll of such conditions. The constant worry about food, the fear of starvation, the witnessing of crops withering and dying, these would have undoubtedly taken a heavy toll on the morale and resilience of the community. The spiritual beliefs that had once provided comfort and guidance might have been challenged as prayers for rain went unanswered. The gods, once seen as benevolent protectors, could have been perceived as indifferent or even wrathful. This environmental stress acted as a potent accelerant, exacerbating the problems already created by resource depletion. The deforestation, which had removed the trees that helped retain moisture in the soil and contributed to rainfall, now meant that the island was even more susceptible to drought. The erosion, which had stripped away the fertile topsoil, meant that even when rain did fall, the land was less able to absorb and utilize it. The island's capacity to support its inhabitants was rapidly diminishing. As resources dwindled, the competition for what remained intensified. The social fabric of Rapa Nui, which had been so carefully woven over centuries, began to fray. The once unified society fractured into warring clans. Imagine the desperation that must have gripped these communities. Faced with the existential threat of starvation and the breakdown of their traditional way of life, old rivalries likely resurfaced and new conflicts erupted. The chiefs and priests, who had once held absolute authority, found their power challenged. Their ability to provide for their people, to ensure bountiful harvests and spiritual well-being, was severely compromised by the environmental realities. When the land could no longer sustain the population, the legitimacy of their rule was questioned. This led to internal strife, a breakdown of order, and a desperate struggle for survival. In this climate of scarcity and conflict, the iconic Moai, once symbols of unity and ancestral power, became targets. The very monuments that had represented their collective achievements and their spiritual connection to the past were deliberately toppled. This act was not random vandalism, it was a symbolic declaration. Toppling a Moai signified the rejection of the old ways, the defiance of the ruling elite, and the triumph of rival factions in a desperate struggle for survival. It was a visual representation of a society in collapse, its foundations crumbling under the weight of environmental catastrophe and internal conflict. The evidence for these droughts comes from various sources, including paleoclimatic data derived from lake sediments and ice cores from distant glaciers that can reveal patterns of rainfall over long periods. Archaeological findings also provide clues, such as evidence of water management systems that were perhaps built or expanded during periods of increased drought, or changes in the types of crops cultivated. The pollen record can indicate shifts in vegetation, suggesting periods of drier conditions. The combination of human-induced environmental degradation, particularly deforestation and soil erosion, and natural climatic shifts like prolonged droughts created a perfect storm for Rapa Nui. The island's isolation, which had once been a shield, now meant that there was no external support, no escape route. The Rapa Nui people were left to face the consequences of their actions and the harsh realities of their environment alone. This period marked a dramatic turning point in the history of Rapa Nui. The era of monument building and flourishing culture gave way to a grim struggle for survival. The once proud society was forced to confront the consequences of its unsustainable practices, a stark reminder that even the most ingenious civilizations can be brought to their knees by environmental pressures. The droughts, acting in concert with the ecological damage already inflicted, pushed the Rapa Nui people to the brink, setting the stage for the further devastation that would follow. The island, once a vibrant testament to human ingenuity, was becoming a stark landscape of scarcity, conflict, and decline, a poignant lesson in the delicate balance between civilization and the environment. As the island's resources dwindled, a dark shadow fell over Rapa Nui, a shadow cast by desperation and the harsh reality of scarcity. The delicate balance that had sustained their society for centuries was irrevocably broken. Competition for what remained of the island's bounty intensified, and the once unified society began to fracture. The bonds that held the clans together, forged through shared traditions, common goals, and a collective reverence for their ancestors, started to fray under the immense pressure of survival. Imagine the scene: families struggling to find food, communities vying for control of the remaining fertile land, and the once sacred communal spaces becoming arenas for conflict. The social fabric, so meticulously woven over generations, began to unravel. Old rivalries, perhaps dormant during times of prosperity, resurfaced with a vengeance. New conflicts erupted, fueled by hunger, fear, and the breakdown of established authority. The chiefs and priests, who had once commanded absolute obedience, found their power waning as their ability to provide for their people diminished. When the land could no longer sustain the population, the legitimacy of their rule was questioned. This led to internal strife, a breakdown of order, and a desperate struggle for survival, where might, rather than right, began to dictate the course of events. In this grim climate of scarcity and escalating conflict, the very symbols of their past triumphs and spiritual devotion became targets. The Moai, those magnificent stone sentinels that had stood as testaments to their ingenuity, their artistry, and their profound connection to their ancestors, were deliberately toppled. This wasn't an act of random vandalism, it was a powerful, symbolic declaration. Toppling a Moai meant more than just toppling a statue. It signified the rejection of the old ways, the defiance of the ruling elite, and the triumph of rival factions in a desperate bid for power and survival. It was a visual representation of a society in the throes of collapse, its foundations crumbling under the weight of environmental catastrophe and internal conflict. Picture the scene. The once proud Moai, their stone faces gazing stoically out at the horizon, are violently pushed from their ahu, their ceremonial platforms. They crash to the ground, their colossal forms shattering or toppling, their features often deliberately defaced. This act was a profound statement. It was a rejection of the ancestral beliefs that had guided them for centuries, a repudiation of the spiritual power that the Moai were believed to embody. For the victorious clans, it was a way of erasing the legacy of their rivals, of asserting their dominance, and of ushering in a new era, one where their own power and beliefs would hold sway. The toppling of the Moai marked a critical turning point in the history of Rapa Nui. It was a clear indication that the social and spiritual order had collapsed. The intricate hierarchy, the shared rituals, the collective reverence for the ancestors, all of it was being dismantled in the face of existential threat. Each fallen Moai represented a broken covenant, a severed link to the past, and a desperate attempt to forge a new future in a world that was rapidly deteriorating. It was a grim testament to the fact that when survival becomes the paramount concern, even the most deeply held beliefs and the most monumental achievements can be cast aside. This period of internal conflict and iconoclasm was likely characterized by extreme hardship. The already scarce resources would have been further depleted by the constant warfare between clans. The agricultural lands, already struggling due to soil erosion and potential drought, would have been further damaged by the movement of armies and the destruction of crops. The already precarious food supply would have been pushed to its absolute limit, leading to widespread famine and suffering. The Rapa Nui people, once masters of their isolated domain, were now prisoners of their own making, caught in a devastating cycle of resource depletion, environmental degradation, and societal collapse. The very ingenuity and dedication that had allowed them to create such a remarkable civilization were now turned against them, fueling conflicts that tore their society apart. The Moai, which had once united them in a shared purpose, now stood as silent witnesses to their internecine struggles. The arrival of European explorers in the 18th century would soon bring a new wave of devastation, but the seeds of Rapa Nui's destruction had already been sown from within, a tragic consequence of an unsustainable relationship with their island home and the internal pressures that arose when that relationship soured. The story of the toppled Moai is a stark reminder of how environmental pressures can unravel even the most sophisticated societies, leading to internal conflict and the destruction of cultural heritage in a desperate fight for survival. It is a chapter in the Rapa Nui saga that speaks volumes about human resilience, but also about the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and the failure to heed the limits of the natural world. The island, once a testament to human achievement, was becoming a graveyard of its own past glories, a silent testament to a civilization that had, in its pursuit of the divine and the monumental, tragically overlooked the foundations upon which it stood. The arrival of European explorers in the 18th century, initially met with curiosity and perhaps a flicker of hope for new connections, ultimately unleashed a wave of devastation upon the already struggling Rapa Nui people. This encounter, far from being a benign exchange, marked the beginning of the final, catastrophic chapter in the island's tragic story. The ships that appeared on the horizon, symbols of a wider, more powerful world, carried with them not just new technologies and ideas, but also unseen, insidious agents of destruction, diseases. The Rapa Nui people, isolated for centuries on their remote island, had evolved without exposure to a host of common European ailments. Their immune systems were entirely unprepared for the onslaught of viruses and bacteria that had long been endemic in more densely populated continents. When the first European ships anchored off the coast of Rapa Nui, they brought with them the invisible cargo of smallpox, measles, influenza, and other infectious diseases. For the islanders, these were not just illnesses, they were death sentences. Imagine the swift and merciless spread of these diseases through the population. A single infected sailor, perhaps unaware of the contagion they carried, could inadvertently decimate an entire village. The symptoms would have been terrifying: fevers, rashes, breathing difficulties, and overwhelming weakness. With no understanding of germ theory, no concept of hygiene, and no access to modern medicine, the Rapa Nui people were utterly defenseless. The diseases swept through the population like wildfire, leaving a trail of death and despair. The impact on the social structure was immense. Families were torn apart, communities were decimated, and the very fabric of their society was torn asunder. The elders, the keepers of knowledge and tradition, were often among the first to fall, taking with them invaluable oral histories, spiritual understanding, and practical skills that could never be fully replaced. The already dwindling population, weakened by malnutrition and the stresses of internal conflict, was further ravaged by these foreign contagions. The diseases didn't just kill, they eroded the foundations of Rapa Nui culture and identity. The initial encounters, such as the one with Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen in 1722, were just the beginning. Subsequent visits by Spanish, French, and British expeditions continued to introduce these devastating pathogens. Each new arrival, each new contact, reopened the wounds and reinfected the surviving population. The island, once home to thousands, became a place of profound sickness and loss. The vibrant energy that had fueled the creation of the Moai and the complex social structures of the past was being extinguished by an invisible enemy. But the devastation did not end with disease. The external world, once a distant rumor, now brought with it a more direct and brutal form of exploitation: slave raids. In the mid-19th century, Peruvian slave traders, notorious for their cruel and rapacious practices, turned their attention to Rapa Nui. Seeing a weakened and vulnerable population, they arrived with the sole purpose of capturing islanders to be sold into forced labor, primarily on Guano Islands off the coast of Peru. These slave raids were horrific events. Islanders, often lured onto ships under false pretenses or simply captured by force, were torn from their homes and families. They were subjected to brutal treatment, forced to work in dangerous conditions with little to no food or water, and often died from exhaustion, starvation, or disease before they could even reach their destinations. The slave traders were not interested in the well-being of the Rapa Nui people. They were only interested in their labor, viewing them as commodities to be exploited. The impact of these raids on the already depleted population was catastrophic. Imagine the terror that gripped the island as slave ships appeared on the horizon. The Rapa Nui people, having already suffered so much, now faced the horrifying prospect of being forcibly removed from their ancestral lands, their culture, and their very way of life. The raids further decimated the population, stripping away the remaining able-bodied men and women, the very individuals who were crucial for the island's survival and the preservation of their heritage. The slave traders were not concerned with the social or cultural implications of their actions. They were driven by profit, and the Rapa Nui people, in their weakened state, were easy targets. Entire families were broken apart, communities were left with only the very young and the very old. The knowledge and traditions that had been passed down through generations were being lost forever, either through disease or through forced exile. The scale of this devastation is almost unimaginable. From an estimated peak population of perhaps 15,000 people, the numbers plummeted dramatically. The intricate social structures, the elaborate ceremonies, the monumental achievements, all of it was being erased by the relentless tide of external forces. The island, which had once pulsed with life and cultural dynamism, was becoming a ghost land, haunted by the echoes of its past glory and the stark reality of its present decline. By the late 19th century, the once thriving civilization of Rapa Nui had been reduced to a mere handful of survivors. The population had fallen to just over 100 individuals. These were the remnants of a proud and resourceful people, the last custodians of a unique culture. They were the few who had managed to survive the onslaught of disease and the brutality of the slave raids, clinging to existence on their ravaged island. The vibrant culture that had carved the Moai and built a complex society was on the brink of extinction. The legacy of their ancestors, The monumental stone figures that still stood sentinel were now silent witnesses to the near-total annihilation of their creators. The story of Rapa Nui had become a stark and tragic testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked external exploitation and the vulnerability of isolated societies to the forces of the wider world. It was a brutal reminder that even the most ingenious civilizations can be brought to their knees, not just by their own actions, but by the careless or cruel intrusions of others. The arrival of Europeans was not an encounter of equals. It was an invasion that brought with it the seeds of annihilation, a final, crushing blow to a civilization already struggling under the weight of its own environmental challenges. From an estimated peak of 15,000 people, a number that represented the culmination of centuries of ingenuity and adaptation, the population of Rapa Nui plummeted. The late 19th century saw a devastating decline, a demographic collapse that left the island teetering on the brink of oblivion. The vibrant culture, the intricate social structures, the monumental achievements that had defined the Rapa Nui people for so long were now facing the very real possibility of complete erasure. The story of Rapa Nui, once a testament to human potential, was now a tragedy, a haunting echo of a civilization on the verge of extinction. The numbers themselves paint a grim picture, a stark representation of the devastation that had ravaged the island. 15,000 souls, a thriving community that had successfully navigated the challenges of isolation and environmental constraints for centuries, reduced to a mere handful. Just over 100 individuals remained, clinging to life on a land that had once teemed with activity, creativity, and spiritual significance. Imagine the emptiness, the silence that must have descended upon the island. The bustling villages, the ceremonial platforms, the quarries where the Moai were carved, all were now largely deserted, haunted by the ghosts of the past. This dramatic decline wasn't a sudden event, but rather the culmination of a series of interconnected factors that had steadily eroded the foundations of Rapa Nui society. The diseases brought by European explorers, against which the islanders had no immunity, had decimated the population. The slave raids, carried out by Peruvian traders, had further decimated the population, stripping away the remaining able-bodied individuals. The internal conflicts, fueled by resource scarcity and environmental degradation, had also contributed to the decline, tearing apart the social fabric and undermining the ability of the community to recover. The impact on the cultural landscape was profound. The knowledge and traditions that had been passed down through generations, the oral histories, the spiritual beliefs, the artistic skills, all were at risk of being lost forever. The elders, the keepers of this invaluable cultural heritage, had been among the first to succumb to disease or to be taken away during the slave raids. Their absence created a void that could never be completely filled. The younger generations, witnessing the collapse of their society, were left with a diminished sense of identity and purpose. The very essence of what it meant to be Rapa Nui was threatened with extinction. The creation and maintenance of the Moai, the iconic stone statues, were once a central focus of Rapa Nui culture. The statues were not merely objects of art. They were embodiments of ancestral power, spiritual guardians who were believed to protect the island and its people. The creation of a Moai required immense effort and coordination, involving the entire community. The chiefs and priests organized the workforce, the skilled artisans carved the statues, and the farmers and fishermen provided the resources necessary to sustain the workers. The transport and erection of the Moai were a testament to their ingenuity, their organizational skills, and their unwavering dedication to their ancestors. But as the population dwindled, the ability to continue these practices diminished. The quarries, once bustling with activity, fell silent. The tools used to carve the statues were abandoned. The ceremonial platforms, where the Moai stood, were left to crumble. The spiritual connection to the ancestors, once so strong, was weakened by the loss of so many people and the breakdown of traditional social structures. The Moai, once symbols of unity and power, now stood as silent reminders of the past glory that was slipping away. The decline in the population also had a devastating impact on the environment. The Rapa Nui people had already faced significant challenges due to deforestation, soil erosion, and periods of drought. As the population decreased, the ability to manage the environment sustainably was further compromised. The remaining individuals struggled to maintain their agricultural practices, to prevent further erosion, and to conserve the limited resources that remained. The island, already scarred by human activity, was further exposed to the elements, its delicate ecosystem pushed to the brink. The loss of the Rapa Nui language was another tragic consequence of the population decline. Language is the vehicle of culture, the means by which knowledge, traditions, and beliefs are transmitted from one generation to the next. As the number of speakers dwindled, the language faced the very real threat of extinction. Children, witnessing the collapse of their society, were less likely to learn the language, and the elders, the last remaining speakers, were unable to pass on their knowledge to a new generation. The loss of the language would have meant the loss of a unique worldview, a distinct perspective on the world that had been shaped by centuries of isolation and adaptation. The challenges faced by the surviving Rapa Nui people were immense. They were confronted with the loss of their loved ones, the collapse of their society, and the destruction of their way of life. They were struggling to survive on a ravaged island, facing the constant threat of starvation and disease. The future looked bleak, and the very survival of their culture was in doubt. They were the last embers of a dying fire, clinging to the memories of a glorious past, desperately trying to keep the flame of their culture alive. The colonial powers, who had played such a significant role in the devastation of Rapa Nui, showed little interest in helping the remaining islanders. The focus was on exploiting the remaining resources, on controlling the land, and on imposing their own cultural values. The Rapa Nui people were treated as second-class citizens, their rights and their needs largely ignored. They were left to fend for themselves, struggling to rebuild their lives and to preserve their heritage in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite the immense challenges, the Rapa Nui people did not give up. They demonstrated remarkable resilience, a testament to the enduring human spirit. They began to rebuild their communities, to revive their traditions, and to reclaim their cultural identity. They started to learn their language again, to teach their children about their ancestors, and to pass on the knowledge and skills that had been lost. They began to work to restore the Moai, to protect their environment, and to secure their future. The story of Rapa Nui in the late 19th century is a profound and tragic reminder of the fragility of human civilizations. It is a story of environmental degradation, societal collapse, and the devastating impact of external forces. It is a story of loss, of suffering, and of the near extinction of a unique and remarkable culture. But it is also a story of resilience, of the enduring human spirit, and of the remarkable ability of a people to persevere in the face of overwhelming adversity. It is a story that continues to resonate today, a powerful cautionary tale about the importance of sustainability, the dangers of unchecked exploitation, and the enduring power of cultural identity. The fact that the Rapa Nui people survived it all is a testament to their strength, their determination, and their unwavering commitment to their heritage. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had not been broken. They had lost so much, but they had not lost their spirit. They had been on the brink of extinction, but they had managed to hold on. They had seen their population decimated, their culture threatened, and their way of life destroyed, but they refused to be erased. They were determined to keep the flame of their culture alive, to pass on the memories of their ancestors, and to rebuild their society. Their story is a testament to the enduring human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, hope can prevail. The story of Rapa Nui is a profound reminder of the interconnectedness of humanity and the environment. The Rapa Nui people's choices, driven by a desire to honor their ancestors and to create a thriving society, ultimately led to the degradation of their environment. This degradation, in turn, undermined the very foundations of their society. This is a lesson that resonates today as we face the challenges of climate change, environmental degradation, and resource depletion. The story of Rapa Nui serves as a powerful reminder that we must strive to live in harmony with the environment, to make sustainable choices, and to protect the resources that sustain us. The story of Rapa Nui is a story of loss, but it is also a story of hope. The descendants of the original Rapa Nui people are working to preserve their unique heritage. They are restoring the Moai, protecting the environment, and teaching the Rapa Nui language and traditions to new generations. They are striving to create a future that honors their past, a future where their culture will continue to thrive. Their efforts are a testament to their resilience, their determination, and their unwavering commitment to their heritage. The story of Rapa Nui is not just a story of the past, it is a story of the present and the future, a story of a people who are determined to reclaim their place in the world and to ensure that their culture will endure for generations to come. The story of Rapa Nui, etched in stone and whispered on the Pacific winds, is not merely a tale of rise and fall. It is a story that continues to unfold, a narrative of resilience, of remembrance, and of a people determined to reclaim their heritage. Today, the descendants of those who carved the colossal Moai, who navigated the vast ocean, and who built a society against all odds, are actively engaged in a profound mission to preserve their unique cultural identity and to ensure that the legacy of their ancestors is not lost to time. The Rapa Nui people, though dramatically reduced in number by disease, exploitation, and internal strife, have demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for survival and a deep-seated connection to their ancestral lands. Their efforts to revive and protect their culture are a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit and the power of cultural continuity. This is not simply about preserving artifacts. It is about revitalizing a living culture, a worldview that has been shaped by centuries of isolation, innovation, and a profound spiritual connection to this remote island. One of the most visible and significant aspects of this preservation effort is the ongoing work to restore the Moai. These iconic stone figures, weathered by time, and in some cases toppled by conflict, are being carefully studied, repaired, and re-erected. This is a painstaking process, requiring immense skill, knowledge of traditional techniques, and a deep respect for the original craftsmanship. When a Moai is returned to its ahu, its ceremonial platform, it is more than just a statue being placed back in its original position. It is a spiritual act, a reconnection with the ancestral past, a reaffirmation of the Rapa Nui people's identity and their place in the world. The sound of chisels against stone, the careful lifting and positioning of these immense figures, are not just acts of restoration. They are acts of cultural revival, echoing the endeavors of their ancestors and ensuring that these silent guardians continue to watch over the island for generations to come. Beyond the physical restoration of the Moai, there is a crucial focus on protecting the fragile environment of Rapa Nui. The island's delicate ecosystem, scarred by past resource mismanagement, is now the subject of intensive conservation efforts. This includes reforestation projects aimed at reintroducing native plant species, including the now extinct giant palm trees that were so vital to the island's past. It involves managing water resources, protecting coastlines from erosion, and ensuring that the unique biodiversity of Rapa Nui is preserved. These environmental efforts are deeply intertwined with cultural preservation, as the Rapa Nui people understand that their cultural identity is inseparable from the health and vitality of their island home. Their traditional knowledge of the land, passed down through generations, is proving invaluable in these conservation initiatives. They are not just protecting the environment for its own sake, they are protecting it as the sacred ancestral land that has shaped their history and their identity. Perhaps the most vital element of this cultural revival is the effort to teach the Rapa Nui language and traditions to new generations. The Rapa Nui language, once vibrant and spoken by thousands, had been severely threatened by the dominance of colonial languages and the demographic collapse of the population. However, through dedicated efforts, including language immersion programs, schools, and community initiatives, the Rapa Nui language is being revitalized. Children are learning the ancient words, the songs, and the stories of their ancestors. This transmission of language is crucial, as it carries with it the nuances of their worldview, their spiritual beliefs, and their unique way of understanding the world. Traditional crafts, music, dance, and storytelling are also being actively preserved and promoted. These are not just cultural performances, they are living expressions of Rapa Nui identity, connecting the present generation to the achievements and the spirit of their ancestors. The rhythmic beat of the traditional drums, the graceful movements of the dancers, the captivating narratives shared by elders, these are all integral parts of a vibrant cultural tapestry being rewoven for the future. The passing down of these traditions ensures that the Rapa Nui culture remains dynamic and relevant, adapting to the modern world while staying firmly rooted in its ancient heritage. The story of Rapa Nui is a poignant reminder of humanity's delicate relationship with its environment. The island's history serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the consequences of unsustainable practices, the impact of external forces on isolated societies, and the devastating effects of resource depletion and societal collapse. However, it is also a story of remarkable resilience, of the enduring power of culture, and of the unwavering determination of a people to survive and to thrive. The efforts of the Rapa Nui people today are not just about looking back, they are about building a future. They are about ensuring that the lessons learned from their past, the triumphs and the tragedies, inform the choices they make today and for generations to come. They are working to find a balance between preserving their unique heritage and engaging with the modern world, a challenge faced by many indigenous cultures around the globe. The world watches as the descendants of Rapa Nui strive to protect their sacred landscape, to restore their monumental heritage, and to breathe new life into their ancestral language and traditions. Their journey is an inspiration, a testament to the profound connection between people, place, and culture. It underscores the importance of cultural preservation, environmental stewardship, and the inherent right of every people to define their own future, drawing strength from their past while embracing the possibilities of tomorrow. The silent sentinels of stone, the Moai, once witnesses to a civilization's decline, now stand as symbols of its resurgence, watched over by a people who have not forgotten who they are, where they come from, or what they are capable of achieving. The story of Rapa Nui is a living testament to the enduring power of heritage and the unyielding spirit of a people. The story of Rapa Nui, the story we've been unraveling, is more than just a historical account of a lost civilization. It's a poignant, powerful, and deeply relevant reminder of humanity's incredibly delicate relationship with its environment. It's a story woven with threads of triumph, tragedy, and enduring mystery, a narrative that continues to resonate with us today, offering crucial lessons about our own place in the world and the choices we make. We've seen the rise of a remarkable society, a people who, against all odds, carved a civilization out of an isolated volcanic island. We've witnessed their ingenuity, their artistic prowess, and their deep spiritual connection to their ancestors. We've marveled at the Moai, the colossal stone statues that stand as testaments to their skill and their unwavering dedication. We've explored the complex social structures, the intricate rituals, and the sophisticated understanding of astronomy and engineering that allowed them to flourish for centuries. We've seen them navigate the vast Pacific, establishing a home in one of the most remote places on Earth, a testament to their courage, their skill, and their relentless spirit of exploration. But this story, as we've learned, is also a cautionary tale, a chronicle of decline and collapse. It's a story that highlights the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations when faced with environmental pressures, resource mismanagement, and the unforeseen impacts of external forces. The narrative of Rapa Nui, in its essence, is a profound exploration of sustainability, resilience, and the enduring mysteries of our shared past. Multiple factors contributed to the tragic downfall of Rapa Nui. It wasn't a single event, a sudden catastrophe that wiped out this once thriving society. Instead, it was a complex interplay of forces, a convergence of internal and external pressures that gradually eroded the foundations of their civilization. One of the primary culprits, as we've seen, was resource mismanagement. The very ingenuity and ambition that had allowed the Rapa Nui people to flourish ultimately led to their environmental undoing. The relentless demand for timber, driven by the construction and transport of the Moai, the building of canoes, and the clearing of land for agriculture, led to widespread deforestation. The magnificent palm forests, once a source of abundance and the lifeblood of their society, were gradually depleted. The trees, the very pillars of their infrastructure, were sacrificed in the name of cultural and spiritual pursuits. This deforestation had devastating consequences. It led to severe soil erosion, stripping away the fertile topsoil that sustained their crops. The land became less productive, food supplies dwindled, and competition for resources intensified. The once thriving ecosystem, once capable of supporting a growing population, was pushed to its breaking point. The introduction of rats, likely carried on the canoes of the Polynesian settlers, further exacerbated the problem. These rats, with no natural predators on the island, multiplied rapidly, consuming the seeds of the palm trees and preventing their regeneration. The forest struggled to recover, and the island's ability to support its inhabitants was further diminished. Adding to the human impact were periods of severe drought. These climatic shifts, occurring independently of human actions, further stressed the already fragile environment. The droughts, likely cyclical in nature, would have led to crop failures, water scarcity, and increased competition for the dwindling resources. The combination of environmental degradation and natural climatic variations created a perfect storm, pushing the Rapa Nui people to the brink. As resources became scarcer, the social fabric of Rapa Nui began to unravel. The once unified society, bound together by shared traditions and common goals, fractured into warring clans. The chiefs and priests, who had once held absolute authority, found their power challenged. Internal conflict erupted, fueled by hunger, fear, and the breakdown of social order. The iconic Moai, once symbols of unity and ancestral power, became targets. They were toppled, deliberately defaced, a stark visual representation of the collapse of old beliefs and the triumph of rival factions in a desperate struggle for survival. Then came the arrival of European explorers in the 18th century, bringing with them devastating diseases to which the Rapa Nui people had no immunity. Smallpox, measles, influenza. These foreign contagions swept through the population like wildfire, decimating their numbers. The diseases didn't just kill, they eroded the foundations of Rapa Nui culture and identity. Families were torn apart, communities were decimated, and the very fabric of their society was torn asunder. The slave raids of the 19th century further compounded the devastation. Peruvian slave traders, seeking a workforce for guano mining, targeted the weakened Rapa Nui population, capturing islanders and forcing them into brutal labor. These raids further decimated the population, stripping away the remaining able-bodied men and women. The knowledge and traditions that had been passed down through generations were lost forever. From an estimated peak population of 15,000 people, the Rapa Nui population plummeted to just over 100 by the late 19th century. The vibrant culture that had carved the Moai and built a complex society was on the brink of extinction. The story of Rapa Nui, once a testament to human potential, had become a tragedy, a haunting echo of a civilization on the verge of complete erasure. The story of Rapa Nui, therefore, stands as a powerful cautionary tale about sustainability. It demonstrates the critical importance of managing resources responsibly, of recognizing the limits of the environment, and of understanding the long-term consequences of our actions. The Rapa Nui people, in their quest to honor their ancestors and to build a thriving society, inadvertently destroyed the very foundations of their existence. Their story serves as a stark reminder that unsustainable practices, driven by short-term gains or cultural imperatives, can have devastating long-term consequences. It's a lesson that resonates with us today as we face the challenges of climate change, environmental degradation, and resource depletion. We must learn from the mistakes of the past and strive to live in harmony with the natural world, ensuring the sustainability of our own societies. The story of Rapa Nui is also a powerful testament to the concept of resilience. Despite facing unimaginable challenges, the Rapa Nui people demonstrated remarkable strength and determination. They survived the devastation of disease, the brutality of the slave raids, and the internal conflicts that tore their society apart. The fact that any Rapa Nui people survived at all clinging to existence on their ravaged island, is a testament to the enduring human spirit. They demonstrated a profound connection to their culture, their ancestors, and their land, a connection that fueled their determination to persevere. Today, the descendants of the original Rapa Nui people are working tirelessly to preserve their unique heritage. They are actively engaged in restoring the Moai, protecting the environment, and teaching the Rapa Nui language and traditions to new generations. Their efforts are a testament to their resilience, their unwavering commitment to their cultural identity, and their determination to ensure that the legacy of their ancestors endures. The story of Rapa Nui is a powerful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, hope can prevail. It is a story of cultural survival, of the enduring power of the human spirit, and of the importance of preserving our shared heritage. Finally, the story of Rapa Nui highlights the enduring mysteries of our shared past. The creation of the Moai, the complex social structures, the sophisticated understanding of astronomy and engineering, these are all testaments to the ingenuity, the artistry, and the intellectual capabilities of the Rapa Nui people. The precise methods used to transport and erect the Moai, the exact nature of their religious beliefs, and the reasons behind their societal collapse, these are all questions that continue to fascinate and intrigue historians, archaeologists, and researchers. The story of Rapa Nui is a reminder that there are still so many mysteries to be unraveled, so many secrets to be discovered about the past. It's a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity and the importance of continuing to explore and to learn from the diverse cultures that have shaped our world. The story of Rapa Nui is not just a historical narrative, it is a living lesson. It's a story that speaks to the fragility of civilization, the importance of environmental stewardship, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a story that compels us to reflect on our own relationship with the environment, on our own responsibilities to future generations, and on the choices we make that will shape the course of our own history. The echoes of Rapa Nui resonate with us today, urging us to learn from the past and to strive for a more sustainable, resilient, and just future. The silent sentinels of stone, the Moai, continue to gaze out at the horizon, not just as monuments to a lost civilization, but as reminders of the enduring mysteries of our shared past and the crucial importance of safeguarding our planet for all time.